Our focus on children going back to school, and activists say parents should also put their safety into consideration, whether it be fetching your child from school on time or always being aware of their whereabouts before or after school. Parents and guardians need to be well informed. The 2012 report by the South African Police Service shows that children face a substantial amount of violent experiences in their lives. Over 50,000 cases of violent crimes against them were reported in that year alone. To tell us more about how to ensure that your child is safe, Vincentia Ngobese is from Women and Men Against Child Abuse, and she is in studio. Vincentia, thank you very much for being with us, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me.
How important is it that parents and guardians think about these issues? I mean, is it at the top of our minds?
In reality is that, a lot of parents don't think about it until it happens. And we need to acknowledge that, our children are not safe in the country, across all social, economic groups. And parents need to take these issues into consideration and take safety very important. And how do they do that? This is a discussion that we need to be having with parents. It's a discussion that we need to be having with caregivers on how to ensure safety for their children.
Yeah, no doubt, because, I mean, violent crimes against children is unacceptable in any form. But, we specifically speaking about before school, after school, how is the situation with that?
Parents need to put measures in place to ensure that they know who the children are being supervised by when they go to work. For example, make arrangements for your children to be taken to school. For children that are going alone, walking alone, they don't need to be walking alone on their own because they are minor children. Have older children accompanying them in communities where they can feel safe, because we know that there are those children that are going to be targeted because they travel long distances. We've heard of cases that children have been targeted on their way to schools. So we also need the buy-in of our community policing forum to say, play a part in this, be around, just ensure that you are there in groups to ensure that our children are being safe. After school as well, to say that your child need not to be waiting a long period for you as a parent to come and fetch them, because, with people that are preying on children, they look for these vulnerable children because they're always there on guard to say which child can they target. So parents need to be very vigilant in terms of their children whereabouts at all times.
Yeah, that I imagine is a huge problem. You've got parents that are working as well, and that that can't necessarily be there to pick up their kids and rely on catching buses or taxis home and things like this. And this, perhaps, is what you're saying, makes them even more vulnerable.
Yes, it makes them very vulnerable. But the other thing that will assist with parents is that they need to be communicating with their children, need to discuss with children, need to find out, when you speak to your children every day, ask them, how was school today? How did you travel? What happened? And children will always tell you that there was this old man, strange man that called me today. Then a mother can have, her instinct to say, no, this is something, because children will always tell you when they feel unsafe, because as a child walking alone and somebody just calls you, it makes you uncomfortable. And parents need to take that in, and take it seriously, because some parents need to just say, when you just don't want to go to school, go to school. But a child will always tell you, so parents need to listen to their children.
Yeah, it's true. You have to communicate with them, and inevitably they are telling you the truth,
yes.
And that's something that we forget.
Yes, that we need to believe.
You think you're making up stories, but they're not.
Yes. Because we need to believe our children.
Yeah.
Because what we see is that there's this myth that children lie. And parents just say, this child has got something. But if you feel that, for example, if you feel that your child is lying, maybe there's a reason that she's lying, don't you think? So you need to go to the bottom of it and actually find out, why is my child saying this? But we tend to be forgetting sometimes as parents that because we are so busy with our work, with our responsibility, and being mothers, being professional, being employees to somebody, being wives to people, but we forget that we also parents to our children,
yeah.
And that children are more vulnerable than any other person.
I also think that, in terms of, I imagine knowing the company they keep, that as a parent is also a massive responsibility. Know their friends, know their friends' parents. Is this perhaps another way of protecting your children?
Yes, when you know where your child is and you know who's talking to your child, so then you can have an idea of what is exactly happening in your child's life. For example, if you sort of not know who your child is chatting with on their cell phones, there are things that somebody else, your child's friend might be telling your child something else. So as a parent, you need to be actively involved in your child's activities, because we know that even teachers at school do abuse our children.
Yeah.
We know that sports coaches do abuse our children. We know that pastors do. But if you don't communicate with your child and make sure and find out who's your child, being involved with, and if there's a character that you don't understand in your child, so it's easier for a parent to be, to be proactive in preventing, possible abuse, and acknowledging that sometimes as parents that we're not always going to protect our children. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. But I just think there's a little bit of advice, and perhaps it's logic to you, but it's maybe logic that you need to hear. You have to be actively involved in your children's lives just to protect them. And I think that's what the important message is here.
Yes, and not forget that, because sometimes children are treated like a piece of furniture, but they're not. They're human beings with emotions. So get involved, and sometimes there are situations that as parents when parents are going through difficulties in their own lives, they forget that there are little ones that also need to be guided through it. So children need guidance and need nurturing and need protection. So regardless of whether you reach or not, because if you reach and afford a private tutor, that private tutor can abuse a child.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you are unemployed as well and you need to go and, try to find a job, your child might be vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it's across all social-cultural groups and across all races and and
knows no boundaries. Unfortunately, abuse happens to anybody, unfortunately. Vincentia Ngobese, thank you so much for talking to us from Women and Men Against Child Abuse, just preparing us for going back to school and just getting involved and protecting our children as they make their way out into this big, bad world, as one can call it. Right, let's take a quick